Our origin is the first chapter we will be looking into, where we go through our different developmental stages. And after that, we look into the unconscious trauma, rejections of ourselves from early childhood, which is molding our sense of self and our view on the world. And this is what is often built into the different developmental stages. Basic meditation introduction comes then, and after that also body active meditations and methods. And then we will be exploring this IoPT trauma healing therapy, which I'm educated in and I find a big value in the psychological understanding behind. And then we're going to go through an overview of our neurological networks that are facilitating aspects of our psyche. And the new worldview of the quantum dynamic field of consciousness, which is a very interesting scientific area also, which can be very helpful in understanding one's deep experiences in meditation. So from here we will be moving into the first chapter. When we feel ourselves and experience ourselves in everyday life, we normally don't relate to ourselves as someone who has come out of formless nothingness, a formless consciousness with thoughts and emotions. Where do our individual thinking, feeling, and sense of me come from? In formless stage of oceanic consciousness, in fertilized egg cell in growth, impulse for contact, in need of nourishment, connected with our mother's organism, my mother. Maybe some of you have had experience of having some out-of-body experience and kind of coming back into your body. Maybe that can give a little sense of what our journey has been from being in an expanded state and entering into a physical being. And this is things we have possibilities of exploring through various therapies and deep meditative states. Resting in being, meditative connection with mother in meditative rest with me. Unborn in a sense of feeling wanted, loved and nurtured. Resting in safe contact with oneself, one's existence, and with the universe. Born into a welcoming visual universe in connection with the mother in the outer world, outside her body. Lots of body contact in the first year, in a continuation of contact with our inner depth. Evolutionary, we were in a way born a year too early because of our large head, which is why we are so unusual, vulnerable, and helpless compared to other mammals. Restful attachment and pleasurable nourishment. Gradually, exploration of sensory motor reality, more detail aware, focused, and active. With good attachment, trust, and help from other caregivers, parents, siblings, grandparents, or those around we get help to gradually leave the symbiosis with our mother in a movement out into the world. We build our own will and determination. Freedom to play, stand on our own 2 feet, and slowly learn about the world in our own rhythm. Good, important, deep nights of sleep in a dark and quiet room so that melatonin, the sleep hormone, can help with deep sleep. Based on the womb period, the infant age, and the other developmental ages, we find ourselves in the teenage years with all the hormones and our place in the world. With a healthy upbringing, an easy and playful adult life. Our loving life imprint lays like a healthy, nourishing background in our nervous system. In the meeting with ourselves in silence, we can start to become conscious about the thinking, feeling, sensing me, which we most often refer to as me, a psychological sense of me, a voice in our mind shaped by our life story, where perhaps repressed small parts of ourselves vitally lays as pain in our lives. When losing touch with one's being of love, when we as loving beings is not in heartfelt connection with our close caregivers, we eventually end up closing off to our depth of being. Pain or hurt and fight for survival contracts vital parts of us. Out of touch with our soulful loving being and in survival after basic needs, we now get more and more dependent on seeking that love and nourishment outside of us, often mixed in with creation of mental love illusions about childhood, close caregivers, and later on partners as a way of creating some kind of loving connection. With our human ability to simulate imagination, we run after love substitutes as a way of not having to deal with existential pains in our being. Yeah, and here a look into developmental traumas. Developmental traumas is not only a result of what has happened to us, but often even deeper what has not happened, like basic existential needs that were not met. I just need to move this. So, as a culture, we are often not quiet enough within ourselves to be able to listen to our deeper nervous system and existential needs, which also makes it extremely difficult for us to be present for all the little new souls that constantly arrives to our planet Earth, trying to find their way into this world. In a culture that does not focus on the deeper human being, it requires even more of the individual to maintain contact with their deeper sense of self. With insensitivity and absence from ourselves, it quietly becomes the new normal, which is unconsciously inherited generation after generation, if consciousness does not grow around this. Yes, identity trauma in the unbound state in a dissociated modern society. Lying in a womb of stress, unable to fight or flee, connected with Mother's inner universe of emotions and body. Mother in disinterest of my existence, or perhaps downright furious of my existence or her own life. Left alone in a cold universe of helplessness, shock, contraction, self-hatred, unbearable pain of not being wanted, loved, nurtured. I dissociate, get shut down, disappear to not feel myself and my unbearable reality. A numbing reflex within me numbs my fight and flight preparedness and wrap me into a fog of deadness. I attack myself with deadness. I hold on to the abuse of myself like a fear of death that cannot and will not let go. It's my survival not to be in touch with my mother, my world, and my existence. Too painful. With no contact, I'm deadening myself as a way of survival. I forget myself and where I come from. Survival memories in nerves and psyche. Intense, threatening stress conditions activate strong emotions and survival response. And when it does not find a solution, it can end up as a numbness in our nervous system and connective tissue. In experience of survival, when not met in empathy, when we are not met with empathy in helpless states, we end up shutting down, paralyzing our own activated fight-flight response, attacking ourselves, compulsively becoming still. In innocence, we take in the treatment we receive as infants and children, and later on, we turn it into our own invisible treatment of ourselves, for better or for worse. Breastfeeding without sense of calm, attachment, and loving feelings. In survival, when not met in nurture. When we lose our sense of safety and are left in the institution long before we are ready for it. In survival, when sense of safety does not get met. Growing up in an institution, where is my attachment? Where is my sense of safety in the world? Where can I rest? Out of absolutely necessity to get some kind of contact, we unconsciously mold ourselves into adaptation and reject our inner sense of me and will, lost in the space of institution. Our school of industry, the one-sided linear material world, a life governed from the outside by schedules and curricula, steered away from our inner depths. Where is my inner compass? Where am I? My desire and my will marinated into the normal. Yes, and here an overview that I found, which is expressing the symptoms of being in fight, flight, or freeze. So if you want, you can stop the video and read more into those. Screen time, blue light, social media, superficial sleep, and the hijacking of our primal human psyche. Hijacked into a psychological survival of upholding our image. And I put those as a question mark. acute trauma and or long-term burdensome traumatization in adult life. Some pictures expressing that. With childhood developmental traumas in the underground of our being in daily adult life, we easily leave our body and get captured in our head, often in rapid thinking. Panic, anger, pain enters our thoughts, which becomes the glasses we look through, and then it becomes difficult to maintain sensitivity towards oneself and others. Yeah, and then I placed a picture of one meditating, just as a symbolizing the value of meditation in everything that's going on in us, so that we can let that center in us grow and heal the trauma parts in our depth and in our daily life that we might be carrying with us. Yeah. And then the pictures below kind of expressing this underground from our past that we carry with us. We haven't healed and been meeting it. Psychological survival, striving to secure against the inner sense of existential helplessness. Yeah, because it's a striving that everybody has, and yeah, some seem to succeed more with it than others, but basically those that are succeeding might be the ones that are running just as hard away from their being as anybody else, and maybe even more. And some are hanging in there, and some are working hard, and some goes into burnout and exhaustion. So the question here is a little bit also, how is our ancient nervous system for coping with modern life? Our nervous system has developed in 100,000 of years of living in tribes and very small communities. So it's a whole new thing for us human animals to deal with. And then I just wrote here, approximately 60% of adults in the United States have a chronic disease, which are also saying something about our current condition. The great wheel of the human psyche in our human society. In a global human society, we find approximately 8 billion individual nervous systems, where there are unconscious memories of unmet basic needs in a variation of degrees. These deep unconscious silent pains in our nervous systems, which are locked in neurological circuits, is holding us in subtle trauma behaviors from childhood, which basically is about not meeting ourselves in our existential nature. In existential holes in our sense of me, the wheel of our unhealthy society has its origin. The hole of the hungry ghost that can never be satisfied, and where external stimulation can only temporarily suppress existential pain. If we do not learn to listen to our healthy, true, quiet nature in us, further suffering will develop. Chronic illness, addiction, workaholism, psychological disorders, overeating, and industries stands ready for delivery to our human escape from ourselves. As a society, we must learn to create a nurturing environment for our deeper human nature. Yeah. Kind of place this picture as an individual in relation to society. Developmental traumas at the root of individuals leads to lost touch with sense of self, where swarms of thoughts arise out of fragmentation in our psychology, which leads to internal division, struggle, or stuckness between these parts in us. When turned outward, it leads to aggressive dynamics against others, which spills over into communities, nations, continents, and planet Earth. A society cannot be healthier than the individuals it consists of. As developmental traumas, chronic stress, and cultural unconsciousness finally throws us out of touch with our soulful being, the world is at risk of becoming a dead and mechanical world. And here, overview of some of the pictures we have gone through. The developmental trauma stages. Which voices do we bring with us from the past? And who am I in all of it? Yeah. And how do we move on? So this is the healthy developmental stages that is valuable for us to find ways of growing within us and as societies, finding the healthy parts of us and growing it. Oh. Yeah, and this is kind of the core of our being, amness of being, the opening where we experience everything from our silent, basic being of the universe. Yeah. And this can have a big healing potential when we are able to connect all of our parts to this basic sense of awake and alive being. And this is the last slide in this chapter. So in the next chapter, we will be moving more into basic meditation, which is the natural next step.